You have to hear this. What this father did is something you will not see coming, and the ending. The ending is pure gold. You're gonna want to stick around for this. I gave my son Ethan everything. Every single thing I had. But the day my daughter-in-law Olivia showed up at my apartment door, flanked by a mountain of designer suitcases, telling me she was moving in because they'd sold their condo, my only response was, "What are you talking about?" She just smiled, that slick, confident smile of hers. "Oh, James, don't be difficult. Ethan was supposed to call you. We're moving in." I just shook my head. "He didn't tell you?" "I changed the locks yesterday. You should have seen her face. It was like a flawless porcelain mask cracking in slow motion." The expensive handbag slid from her shoulder. The suitcases she'd been dragging with such entitlement suddenly seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds, and she let go. They thudded onto the worn hallway carpet. For the first time in years, I felt the ground firm up beneath my own feet. I was getting my life back. But let me tell you how I got to that moment, because this story, it didn't start on my doorstep. It started 30 years ago, when I was widowed at 38 with a 10-year-old boy, Ethan, who was my whole world. My wife Emily was taken by cancer. It was fast, it was brutal, and it left us with nothing but memories and a mountain of medical debt. There was no life insurance to speak of, no big savings account. It was just me and my boy, and a hole in our lives so big I thought it would swallow us whole. I paid for the funeral by selling our small house, the one Emily had filled with so much love and laughter. We moved into a 2-bedroom rental apartment. I sold her jewelry, even her wedding ring, a piece of my own heart, just to keep us afloat. From that day on, my life had one single purpose: Ethan. My days were a blur of grease and sweat. I was a mechanic, a good one. I worked at a garage from sunup to sundown, and when that wasn't enough, I took on side jobs at night, fixing up old cars in my own rented garage space. On weekends, I'd do oil changes for neighbors for a few extra bucks. Everything, and I mean everything, was so Ethan could have the life I never did. An education, a white-collar job, a future where his hands stayed clean. While other dads were at ball games or buying new fishing gear, I was wearing the same steel-toed boots for 5 years straight. The soles worn so thin I could feel every pebble on the pavement. My only luxury, my only joy, was seeing my son succeed, and he did. Ethan was a great kid, smart, focused, kind. When he graduated high school at the top of his class, he told me he wanted to study business at a prestigious private university. The tuition was a staggering $50,000 a year. $50,000. It might as well have been $1 million. I didn't have it. But I wasn't about to let that stop him. I took out a second mortgage on a car I barely owned. I cashed in the tiny retirement fund I'd managed to start. I worked 80-hour weeks, fueled by cheap coffee and the image of my son in a cap and gown. My body ached. My back screamed. My hands were permanently stained with grease and tiny metal slivers. But I did it. My son got into that university. For the next 4 years, I lived on fumes. My diet was mostly canned soup and day-old bread from the bakery down the street. I didn't buy a single new shirt. I patched my work jeans until they were more patches than denim. Every dime I earned went straight to Ethan. His tuition, his books, his meal plan, his dorm fees. He never knew the depth of my sacrifice. I never told him. Because that's what fathers do, right? We build the foundation so our kids can touch the sky. We don't ask for thanks. Ethan graduated with high honors. He landed a fantastic job at a big investment firm in the city. I was bursting with pride. Finally, after all the blood, sweat, and tears, my boy was going to have a better life, and for the first few years, it was perfect. Ethan would visit me every Sunday. We'd watch football. He'd bring me groceries. He'd slip a $100 bill into my shirt pocket when he thought I wasn't looking. "For you, Dad. For everything." He was the son every father dreams of. Then he met Olivia. She was a junior partner at his firm. The first time he brought her to my apartment, I knew something was off. It was in her eyes. The way she scanned my small, cluttered living room, the faded armchair, the stacks of old car magazines. It wasn't curiosity. It was appraisal. And I was failing the inspection. Her smile never quite reached her eyes. "So," she said, her voice tinkling like expensive brittle glass. "This is where you grew up, Ethan. It's cozy, but my son was smitten. Head over heels, blind to the world in love. So I bit my tongue. I forced a smile when she'd make little jokes about my blue-collar job. It must be so. Physical, she'd say, wrinkling her perfect nose. I tried to see what Ethan saw in her. I tried to believe she would make him happy. How wrong I was. From the moment they got married, Olivia started building a wall between me and my son, brick by invisible brick. The rules were unspoken, but they were crystal clear. I couldn't just drop by anymore. I had to call and schedule a visit, usually weeks in advance. My calls to Ethan after 8 p.m. went unanswered. If I tried to offer any advice, any fatherly wisdom, Olivia would cut in with a saccharine-sweet voice. "James, we have it handled. But thank you." And if I ever dared to push back, even gently, she would play the victim. She'd get teary-eyed and tell Ethan that I was being overbearing and critical, that I didn't think she was good enough for him, and my son, my smart, dedicated son, always took her side. Every single time, "Dad, you just have to understand," he'd say in a hushed, apologetic tone over the phone. "Olivia's under a lot of pressure at work. She's just trying to build a life for us. Just give her a chance. It'll get better," but it never got better. It got so much worse. The visits went from every few weeks to once every couple of months. And when I was finally allowed into their gleaming, minimalist condo, a place that looked more like a hotel lobby than a home, Olivia treated me less like a father and more like a handyman. "James, since you're here, could you take a look at the garbage disposal? It's making a funny noise. James, this bookshelf from Sweden is impossible. Would you mind putting it together for us while we run some errands?" And I did it. I did it all with a smile plastered on my face, because it was the only way I could see my son. It was the price of admission to his new life. One day, about 3 years ago, I decided to surprise him. It was the anniversary of his mother's passing, a day we always spent together, quietly remembering her. I drove to their condo, holding a small bouquet of Emily's favorite flowers, white lilies. I buzzed their apartment. Olivia's voice came through the intercom, sharp and annoyed. "Yes? It's James," I said. "I came to see Ethan." There was a long pause. "He's busy, James. We have guests." "Guests? Today?" I was confused. We'd never missed this day together. "Yes, guests. From my firm. It's an important networking dinner. You can't come up right now. It's not a good time?" Not a good time. To remember his own mother. I felt the blood drain from my face. Can I just leave these flowers for him?" My voice cracked. Another sigh, this one laced with pure exasperation. "Fine, leave them with the doorman." And then a click. The line went dead. I stood on that cold, polished sidewalk, holding those flowers, feeling like a complete stranger. I looked up at their window, a bright square of light high above the city, and I knew. My son was in there, entertaining strangers, while his own father stood on the street, shut out. He was ashamed of me, ashamed of his old man, the mechanic with grease under his fingernails. That night, for the first time since my wife died, I cried. Not loud, gut-wrenching sobs, but silent, bitter tears that soaked my pillow. I looked around my small apartment, at the pictures of Ethan on the wall, Ethan on his first bike, Ethan at his high school graduation, Ethan holding his diploma, and I wondered if it had all been a mistake. Had I sacrificed my entire life just to raise a man who would forget where he came from? But the worst, the absolute worst, was still on its way. After that day, something broke between us for good. Ethan stopped visiting altogether. The phone calls dwindled to short, impersonal texts. "Hey, Dad, all good. Swamped at work. Talk soon." But soon never came. Olivia, meanwhile, was whispering poison in his ear. I found out from a cousin that she'd been telling Ethan that I was resentful of his success, that I was trying to guilt him with my sacrifices, that I was a lonely old man trying to cling to him because I had no other life. And the most vicious lie of all, that the stress of living with a simple-minded mechanic was what made his mother sick in the first place. Every lie was a knife in my back. But the deepest cut was that Ethan believed her. My own son, the boy I taught to ride a bike and bait a hook. He chose to believe her. When I tried to defend myself, he'd shut me down. "Dad, I'm not getting into this with you. Olivia is my wife. That's final, that's final." As if 30 years of fatherhood could just be dismissed, the months turned into a year. I was 66 and my body was starting to give out. The arthritis in my hands made holding a wrench feel like gripping hot coals. My knees groaned every time I had to get up from under a car. The doctor told me I needed to retire, to rest. But how? The rent on my apartment kept going up. and my social security barely covered it. I had to keep working. My apartment was my sanctuary. 2 bedrooms, nothing fancy, but it was filled with memories. The walls were a timeline of Ethan's life. Every photo was a testament to the fact that my life, my struggle, had meant something. But Olivia seemed determined to strip even that away from me. One afternoon, after months of me begging Ethan to let me see him, Olivia called. "James, we've been thinking," she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Ethan and I feel it's time you moved out of that old apartment. It's really not safe for a man your age to be living alone." I was stunned. "What are you talking about, Olivia?" "This is my home. Well, we're thinking of your future. We found a wonderful retirement community. It's a bit outside the city, but it's very secure. You'd have your own little room, and there are activities." Bingo, I think. A little room. Bingo. She was talking about shipping me off to an old folks' home. "I don't need a retirement community," I said, my voice tight with anger. "I'm fine right here." "James, don't be difficult," she sighed. "We're trying to help you. We could sell off all this clutter," she said, the contempt clear in her voice. "And the money could go toward your deposit. Ethan and I would even contribute a little. Think of it as our gift to you, a gift." Kicking me out of my home and shipping me off to die was her gift. I looked at my son, who was standing silently by the window, staring out at the street. A coward. My son had become a complete and utter coward. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, my voice low and dangerous. Olivia's mask of concern finally dropped. Her face went hard. "Listen to me, James. I know you're barely scraping by. I know you live off canned soup and Social Security. You have no savings. You have nothing. Stop with the pride and accept that you need our help." Every word was a slap in the face. But what Olivia didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that she was wrong. I wasn't the poor, broken-down old man they saw. I had something, an ace up my sleeve I'd been holding on to for years, and in that moment, as she stood there trying to discard me like a piece of old furniture, I decided it was time to play my hand. I let them think I was considering it. "I'll think about it," I lied. Olivia smiled, a smug, triumphant little smirk. Ethan just nodded, looking relieved that the confrontation was over. I walked out of their condo that day with a fire in my belly I hadn't felt in years. That night I made a decision. I wasn't just going to refuse to be put out to pasture. I was going to take back my life. And I was going to show them just how wrong they were about old James Miller. 2 weeks later, I got a call that changed everything. It was from a patent lawyer at a massive corporation. "Mr. James Miller? My name is David Chen. I'm calling from Techmotive Industries. We're calling about a patent you filed some 25 years ago. A design for a high-efficiency transmission clutch." I almost dropped the phone. It was a design I'd sketched out in my garage late one night, a crazy idea I'd had. I paid a few $100 to file the patent, more as a joke than anything else, and then forgot all about it. "Yeah, I remember it," I said, my heart starting to pound. "Well, Mr. Miller," the lawyer continued, his voice calm and professional, "our company is prepared to offer you $3 million for the exclusive rights to that patent." $3 million. I hung up the phone and just stood there in the middle of my living room, unable to breathe. $3 million, after a lifetime of scraping by, of counting pennies, of worrying about the rent. The world had just tilted on its axis, but I didn't tell a soul. Something deep inside me, a survival instinct honed by years of being underestimated, told me to keep this quiet. Especially from Olivia, especially from Ethan, who was now just a mouthpiece for his wife. I called David Chen back the next day. I hired my own lawyer, a sharp guy named William, to handle the negotiations. Within a month, the deal was done. The money, a life-altering sum, was sitting in a new private bank account that only I knew about. For the first time in my adult life, I was free. I could retire, I could travel, I could buy a house on a lake, and finally get that fishing boat I'd always dreamed of. But something else started to grow inside me. Not revenge, justice. It was a plan, elegant and simple. Because right as the money was being transferred, I got a text from Ethan. "Dad, Olivia, and I need to talk to you. Come to the condo Saturday at 3. It wasn't an invitation. It was a summons. On Saturday, I arrived right on time. Olivia opened the door with that poisonous smile. James, come in. Sit down. We have some important news. Ethan was on the couch looking at his shoes, always looking at his shoes. Olivia sat next to him, taking his hand in that possessive way of hers. James, we've made a decision. We're going to be selling this condo and buying a house. A proper house in the suburbs, with a yard. A better environment for our future children. I just nodded. I had no idea where this was going. Then Olivia dropped the bomb. And since you'll be all alone in that old apartment, we thought it would be a wonderful idea for you to come live with us. The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Live with them. In their new house, under her thumb. She kept talking, her voice syrupy sweet. Of course you'd have your own room. Small but comfortable. And you could help out. With the garden, the cooking, fixing things around the house. To keep you busy. And that way you'd save on rent. At your age, you shouldn't be working anymore. You should be resting and helping your family. What a pretty way to say, becoming our unpaid servant. I looked at my son, waiting for him to object. To at least ask me what I wanted. Nothing. He was a ghost in his own life. I don't need to move in with you, I said, my voice steady. I'm fine where I am, Olivia's smile tightened. James, don't be stubborn. We are offering you a safety net. Or are you so wealthy you can afford to refuse our generosity? Generosity. She called turning me into her live-in janitor generosity. The rage was a hot poker in my gut, but I held it back. Because I remembered the $3 million. I remembered my freedom. And more importantly, I remembered my power. For the first time in a very, very long time, I held all the cards. Thanks for the offer, I said, standing up. But no, I'm staying in my apartment. Ethan finally spoke, his voice laced with irritation. Dad, Olivia's right. You're not fit to live alone anymore. What if you fall? What if you get sick? You need to be near us. I'm 66, Ethan, not 96. I can take care of myself. Olivia stood up, her true colors finally showing. The mask was gone. Listen to me, you old fool, she hissed. I know you have nothing. I know that apartment is a dump. So stop the proud act and accept that you need us. But what she didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that I wasn't the man they thought I was. I had options. I had an escape route. And I decided, right then and there, to let them keep digging their own grave. I'll think about it, I lied again, and walked out the door, leaving them standing there, confident in their victory. I walked out of that condo with a broken heart, but with a mind as sharp and clear as a diamond. That night, I put my plan into motion. A plan that would end right where this story began, with Olivia on my doorstep, and her whole world falling apart. After that disastrous offer from Ethan and Olivia, I spent 3 days in a fog of quiet rage. I'd toss and turn all night, their words echoing in my head. You have nothing. You need us. They saw me as a relic, a broken-down tool to be used and discarded. But they were wrong. A tool has a purpose, and I was about to remind them of mine. The pain eventually burned away, leaving behind a cold, hard clarity. And with that clarity came the plan. I called William, the lawyer who'd handled the patent deal. I need to see you, I said. We need to talk about my son. He understood immediately. What happened? I laid it all out for him in his corner office overlooking Central Park. The years of sacrifice, Olivia's systematic takeover, the constant humiliation, and their latest plan to turn me into their live-in servant. William listened, his face unreadable, just taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back in his leather chair and said something that I'll never forget. James, you've spent your entire life being the provider, the rock, the guy who puts his own needs last. It's an honorable way to live, but honor without boundaries gets mistaken for weakness. The time has come to be the man you always were, but with a fence around your own damn yard. He was right. My whole life, I'd equated love with endless giving. But love without respect isn't love. It's a one-way transaction. And I was done being the only one paying. William helped me lay out the trap. It was beautiful in its simplicity. First, he said, you're retired. As of today, call the garage, tell them you're done. Your body has earned the rest. That was the easiest step. The next was the masterstroke. We're going to buy a property, William said, a glint in his eye. Not just any property, something substantial. A statement. He pulled up a listing on his huge monitor. It was a 4-story brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, classic, elegant, with original woodwork and a small garden in the back. It was the kind of place I used to walk past on my way to work, a world away from my greasy reality. It cost $2 million. We're going to buy this, William continued, and we're going to put it in Ethan's name. I stared at him. What? Why in the hell would I do that? Because, he said, holding up a finger, it comes with a clause. An ironclad, inescapable legal tripwire that I'm going to draft myself. It will state that the property is his and his alone, on one condition: if Olivia Vega is ever granted co-ownership, if she ever becomes a legal resident of the property, or if she stays for more than 7 consecutive nights in any given month. The ownership immediately and irrevocably reverts to you. It will be his golden ticket, but one that he can only cash if he's free of her. It was a perfect trap, a lifeline disguised as a gift. It was my way of helping my son without letting his wife sink the whole ship. What about the rest of the money? I asked. $1 million left, William said. We invest $500,000 in a conservative portfolio. It'll generate a steady income for you for the rest of your life. You'll never have to worry about a bill again. The other $500,000 we keep liquid, for emergencies, and for whatever comes next. For the first time in my life, I felt the solid ground of financial security beneath me. It was a feeling I didn't even know I was missing. But the most important thing I did happened over the next few weeks. It was a quiet revolution. I went to a real men's store, not the discount chain I'd always gone to, and bought new clothes. Nothing flashy. A few pairs of dark-wash jeans that actually fit. Some soft, well-made flannel shirts. A sharp-looking peacoat for the winter. I went to an old-school barber shop and got a proper haircut and a hot towel shave. I looked in the mirror and saw a man I hadn't seen in 30 years. The fatigue was still in my eyes, but there was a spark there, too. A flicker of the man I used to be before life beat me down. The barber clapped me on the shoulder. Looking sharp, my man, like you just won the lottery. I just smiled. Something like that. Meanwhile, Olivia kept calling. Her voice got more and more strained each time. James, have you thought about our offer? We need an answer. The house we want to buy, the sellers are getting impatient. I just played dumb. Still mulling it over, Olivia. It's a big decision, you know. We don't have time for you to mull, James. She'd snap, her fake sweetness gone. Our future is on the line here. Our future. Funny how I was never a part of that future until they needed something. What Olivia didn't know was that I was waiting. I was waiting for the perfect moment for her to overplay her hand. And that moment came 2 months later. Ethan called me. It was so rare for him to call that I knew something was up. Dad, he said, his voice buzzing with excitement. I've got some big news. Olivia's pregnant. We're going to have a baby, a grandchild. They were bringing a child into this mess. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over me. Joy because this was my first grandchild, and absolute terror because that child would be raised under Olivia's thumb. Congratulations, son, I managed to say. That's wonderful news. Thanks, Dad. And listen, he continued, this makes it even more important that you come live with us. Olivia's going to need help. With the pregnancy, with the baby, it's the perfect time for us to all be together. As a family. That word, coming from him now, was like a slap in the face. Ethan, I appreciate the offer. I really do. But I already told you, I can't move in with you. There was a long, cold silence on the other end of the line. Then his voice changed. It became the voice of a stranger. Dad, he said, his tone flat and disappointed. Olivia says that if you don't come, it's because you don't care about us. That you only think about yourself. That you've never really been there for me. And now you're proving her right. Every word was a nail being hammered into my heart. My own son, parroting his wife's insane, twisted lies. Ethan, that's not true, and you know it. I don't know that, Dad. Because from where I'm standing, Olivia's right. You've always been selfish. I built this incredible life for myself, for us, and all you do is hold on to the past and act like a victim. I was speechless. He built this life? The son whose education I'd paid for with my own blood and bone was telling me he did it all himself? The hypocrisy was so thick I could have choked on it. Michael, I started, my voice shaking with a rage I couldn't control. I think you need to take a long, hard look at who sacrificed what in this relationship. Oh, here we go again. he shot back, his voice rising. Always bringing that up. I raised you alone. I paid for your college. I sacrificed everything. You know what, Dad? I'm sick of hearing it. You're tired of your sob story. You did what you were supposed to do as a father, period. It doesn't make you a saint. And then he hung up. My son hung up the phone on me. I sat there in my worn-out armchair, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dead air. The world felt like it had shattered into a million tiny pieces. But then, something inside me shifted. The pain didn't just break me. It forged me into something new. The sadness turned into cold, hard steel. If my son wanted to see me as the villain, then so be it. But he was about to find out that this villain had a few tricks left up his sleeve. After that call, I didn't sleep for 3 days. I just sat in the dark, replaying his words. It doesn't make you a saint. 30 years of my life dismissed in a single cruel sentence. It was as if he'd erased me. But the grief, it burned itself out. And in the ashes, a new resolve was born. I called William. Move everything up, I said, my voice hoarse. I can't wait anymore. He didn't need an explanation. I told him about the phone call, the pregnancy, the final, brutal severing of our bond. He listened and then said, James, sometimes the kindest thing a father can do for his son is to let him hit rock bottom. Only then will he look up and see who was holding the ladder all along. He was right. I had spent my whole life trying to shield Ethan from hardship. Maybe the most loving thing I could do now was to step back and let him face the consequences of his own choices. William finalized all the documents. The deed to the Brooklyn brownstone, now officially in Ethan Miller's name, with the Olivia clause buried deep in the legal jargon. The investment portfolio was set up and already generating income. The $500,000 in cash was secure. Everything was ready. All I needed was for them to walk into the trap, and they did, willingly, eagerly. 3 weeks later, Olivia called me on a Tuesday morning. Her voice was thin, wired with an anxiety she couldn't hide. James, I need to see you. Today. It's important. Come to the condo at 2 p.m. She didn't ask. She commanded, and she hung up before I could respond. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones. I arrived at their condo at 2 o'clock sharp. Olivia opened the door. For the first time ever, I saw her without her armor on. No makeup, hair a mess. She was wearing sweatpants with a stain on them. She looked human and terrified. Come in, she said, not meeting my eye. The condo was half empty. Boxes were stacked in the corners. The expensive art was gone from the walls. Ethan was nowhere to be seen. She collapsed onto the sofa. James, I'll be direct. We sold the condo. The deal closed yesterday. We have to be out in 2 weeks. I just nodded. I already knew they were planning to sell. And the house you were buying? I asked, though her face already told me the answer. The deal fell through, she said, her voice flat. The sellers backed out. And now every other house we look at is out of our budget. The banks, they won't approve a big enough mortgage. She stopped, took a shaky breath. We have too much debt, James. The renovations we did, the new car, the credit cards are all maxed out. With the baby coming, the banks see us as a risk. There it was. The ugly truth behind the perfect facade. They were broke. All that designer furniture, those fancy dinners, the whole performance. It was a house of cards built on debt. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and to my surprise, a small part of me almost meant it. She looked at me then, and her eyes were wide with a vulnerability I had never seen. It was pure fear. That's why, she said, her voice barely a whisper, I need you to agree to let us move in with you. To your apartment. The words hung in the air between us like poison gas. They wanted to move into my place. The place she called a dump. Her, Ethan, and the new baby. 3 people crammed into my small 2-bedroom apartment. And I knew exactly who would be expected to pay the rent. Olivia, my apartment is tiny. We'd never all fit. She leaned forward, her hands clasped so tight her knuckles were white. It's just temporary, James. Just until we get back on our feet. 6 months, maybe a year. Ethan's up for a promotion. I can freelance after the baby's born. We'll get through this. But right now, we need you. We need you. After months of treating me like dirt, now they needed me. The irony was so rich, it was practically a dessert. Let me think about it, I said, keeping my face a perfect blank. She shot up from the couch, her voice rising with panic. There's nothing to think about, James. We're family. This is what family does. Or are you going to let your own son, your pregnant daughter-in-law, and your future grandchild end up on the street? There it was, the emotional blackmail, the guilt trip, disguised as a family plea. Olivia, I said, my voice calm, I told you. I'll think about it. I have to look at my own financial situation. She actually laughed. A short, sharp, ugly sound. Your financial situation? James, please. We all know you're living on fumes. You have nothing. We at least have jobs. We'll pay our way. How much? The question stopped her cold. What? How much are you going to contribute to the rent? My rent is $2,200 a month. If you move in, I'd expect you to cover at least half, Olivia scoffed. Don't be ridiculous, James. We can help with groceries, utilities. But paying you rent? When we're family? That's absurd, absurd. It was absurd for them to pay their way, but perfectly reasonable for me to subsidize their entire existence. I had my answer. I stood up. I'll let you know my decision in a few days. She grabbed my arm as I walked to the door, her grip surprisingly strong. James, please, don't make me beg. I know we haven't always seen eye to eye, but this is for Ethan, for your grandchild. I pulled my arm free. Using your unborn child as a bargaining chip is a new low, even for you, Olivia. I'll give you my answer when I'm ready. I walked out of that half-empty condo feeling a strange surge of power. For the first time in years, the tables had turned. They needed me. I didn't need them at all. That night, Ethan called. He was furious. Dad! Olivia told me you were horrible to her. That you refused to help us. What is wrong with you? Since when did you become so heartless? Heartless, Ethan? I didn't refuse. I asked for time, and I asked how you plan to contribute financially. Contribute? You want to charge your own son rent? His outrage was so phony, so manufactured, I could almost see Olivia in the background, mouthing his lines. I pay rent every month. Ethan, if you and your wife and your future child are going to live under my roof, it's only fair you help carry the load. I am not in a position to support 3 extra people for free. You're unbelievable, Dad, he seethed. Truly, after everything I've done for you, all the times I included you, put up with your drama, and now, the one time I really need you, you turn your back on me. Everything he'd done for me, the audacity was breathtaking. Ethan, let me ask you something, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. How much did your 4 years of university cost? Silence. What does that have to do with anything? Answer the question. I could hear him breathing heavily. I don't know, a lot. You said you'd handle it. $200,000, Ethan. That's what your degree cost. Do you have any idea how I got that money? I worked 3 jobs. I sold my wife's wedding ring. I didn't take a single day off for 4 straight years. And when you graduated, when you started making 6 figures, do you know how much of that you paid back? Nothing, because I never asked you to, because I thought that's what a father does. He gives. But now you have the unmitigated gall to call me heartless because I'm asking you to pay half the rent on a cheap apartment while you figure out your mess. Do you not see the hypocrisy in that? Ethan was quiet for a long, long time. Then his voice came back, stripped of all emotion, cold as ice. You know what, Dad? Forget it. We don't need your charity. We'll figure it out ourselves. We always do. And he hung up. For the second and final time, I sat there on my old armchair, and I smiled. It was a sad smile, but it was also a smile of liberation. I had just realized something profound. I no longer needed my son's approval. I no longer needed to be the saint he accused me of pretending to be. I could just be James, a 66-year-old man who had finally learned that he deserved respect. The next 2 weeks were silent. No calls, no texts. It was as if I had ceased to exist for them. And for the first time, the silence didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like peace. I used the time to finalize everything. William had the deed to the brownstone. The keys were in a safe deposit box. My retirement was secure. My new life was waiting. Then, 2 days before they were supposed to be out of their condo, I got the text. It was from Ethan, Dad. I need to see you. It's urgent. Please. He didn't mention Olivia. He didn't mention money. Just that one desperate word. Please, my first instinct was to delete it. But something held me back. He sounded broken. We agreed to meet at a diner halfway between our apartments. I got there first. I watched him walk in, and I barely recognized him. He was thin, pale, with dark circles under his eyes that looked like bruises. His expensive suit was wrinkled. He looked like a man who had been pushed to the very edge. He slumped into the booth across from me. He didn't speak for a full minute. Finally, he looked up, and his eyes were hollow. "Olivia left me." The words hung in the greasy diner air like a bad smell. "Olivia left me." "What?" My voice was louder than I intended, turning the head of a waitress wiping down the counter. Ethan ran a hand over his face, a gesture of pure exhaustion. 3 days ago, she packed up all her designer bags, cleared out our joint savings account, and went to her mother's. She said she was tired of being married to a failure. He let out a bitter, humorless laugh. She said I was turning into you. Useless, useless. The same poison she'd been dripping in his ear for years now turned on him. She had used him up, wrung him dry, and now that he had nothing left to give, she discarded him like a piece of trash. A part of me, the angry, wounded part, wanted to say, "I told you so." I wanted to shout it from the rooftops. I wanted him to feel a fraction of the pain he'd put me through. But then I looked at my son. Really looked at him. The arrogant, dismissive man from the phone call was gone. In his place was a broken boy, the same boy I'd held in my arms the night his mother died. And despite everything, he was still my son. "I'm so sorry, Ethan," I said, and this time I meant it. He scoffed. "You're sorry? You should be doing a victory lap. You were right all along. About everything. Olivia used me. She isolated me from you so she could control me completely. And the second the money ran out, the second things got hard. She was gone. His eyes filled with tears, real gut-wrenching tears. Seeing my son cry, a grown man, it shattered the last of my anger. "You were right, Dad," he choked out. And I never listened. I let her turn me against you, the one person who was always in my corner. "What about the condo?" I asked softly. "The money from the sale?" He shook his head, looking down at his hands. "Gone. She took it all. Said it was for her and the baby's security. I'm not even on the account anymore. I have nothing. I'm staying on a buddy's couch. I have nowhere to go." There it was. The complete and total implosion of the perfect life he thought he'd built. My son, the high-flying investment banker who'd called me a victim, was now homeless, broke, and utterly alone. And who did he come to? The father he'd despised. The old man he was ready to put out to pasture. "Dad," he whispered, his voice cracking on the single syllable. "I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I know I was a terrible son. I let her humiliate you, and I stood there and did nothing. I should have defended you, but I have no one else. Please, that one word, please." The same word I had wanted to scream at him 1,000 times over the years. Karma is a funny, brutal thing. I took a deep, steadying breath. This was it, the moment of truth, the moment I could unleash years of hurt and anger. I could tell him to get lost. I could make him suffer. But William's words came back to me. Honor without boundaries gets mistaken for weakness. I had established my boundaries. Now it was time to show him what real honor looked like. "Ethan," I said, my voice firm, "I have something to tell you. Something you don't know." His head lifted, his expression confused. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a thick manila envelope. I slid it across the sticky diner table. "About 4 months ago, I got a call. A patent I filed decades ago, a design for a transmission part. A company bought it." I watched his eyes widen as the pieces started to click into place. "What? Why didn't you tell me?" "Why do you think, Ethan?" "Because I knew that if you and Olivia found out, you wouldn't see it as my good fortune. You'd see it as your next resource to exploit. I needed to protect myself. For my own son. Was I wrong?" He looked down, the shame washing over his face. He knew it was the truth. I opened the envelope and pulled out a set of keys and a single, crisp document. "I bought a house, Ethan. A brownstone in Brooklyn Heights." His head snapped up, his jaw slack with disbelief. "What? Why would you do that?" "Because you're my son," I said, my voice thick with emotion I didn't know was still there. "And despite everything, despite all the pain, I never stopped loving you. But I did learn something. I learned to love you with boundaries." I pushed the keys across the table. "The house is yours. It's in your name. You can move in today. It's fully furnished, utilities are on. It's your home now." He stared at the keys as if they were alien artifacts. "Dad, I don't understand." "There's a condition," I said, my voice dropping. I slid the document over. It's a legal clause in the deed. The house is yours and yours alone. But if you ever, for any reason, let Olivia move in with you, if you give her a key, if she so much as spends a week there, you lose the property. It automatically reverts to me. No exceptions. No appeals. Ethan picked up the paper with a trembling hand. He read the dense legal text, his tears splashing onto the page. Dad, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything yet. There's more. I took out William's business card. This is William, my lawyer. He's going to handle your divorce. He's going to make sure Olivia doesn't get another cent from you. He's going to fight for your right to see your child because that baby deserves to know his father, free from his mother's poison. He looked up at me, his face a mask of awe and shame. Why? Why are you doing all of this for me, after how I treated you? I looked him straight in the eye, father to son. Because being a father doesn't mean you tolerate abuse. But it also doesn't mean you abandon your child when he's well and truly lost. There's a difference between enabling someone and helping them. I finally learned where that line is. Ethan stood up from the booth, stumbled around the table, and fell to his knees on the dirty diner floor. He wrapped his arms around my legs and sobbed. He cried like I hadn't seen him cry since he was a 10-year-old boy who had just lost his mom. I'm sorry, Dad. He wept into my jeans. I'm so sorry for everything. For being so blind. For hurting you. For not being the son you deserved. I'm so sorry. I put my hand on his head, stroking his hair just like I used to when he was little. My boy, my lost boy. So broken, so full of regret. I forgive you, Ethan, I whispered. But this is a new chapter. We're starting over. With new rules. With respect. You ever let anyone treat me like that again? You ever treat me like that again? And I swear, I'll walk away and you'll never see me again. Do you understand? Never again, he promised, his voice muffled by my pant leg. I swear to you, Dad, never again. I helped him to his feet. We sat back down. I explained the whole plan. The money, the house, the lawyer. How I'd been preparing for months, just waiting. He listened in stunned silence. When I finished, he looked at me with a new kind of respect. All this time I thought you were weak, he said, his voice full of wonder. I bought into Olivia's narrative that you were just a sad, pathetic old man. But you were the strongest one of all of us. I gave him a sad smile. I wasn't weak, son. I was patient. There's a big difference. The weak break. The patient wait for the right time to move. That conversation in the diner was the first step on a long road. My relationship with Ethan didn't magically heal overnight. It took time. It took work. He moved into the brownstone, and the first time I visited him there, he just stood in the massive, empty living room, looking overwhelmed. It's too much, Dad, he said. I don't deserve this. You don't deserve it yet, I corrected him gently. But you can earn it, by becoming the man I know you can be. He started therapy, just like I told him to. He went every single week, confronting the ugly truths about himself, about his relationship with Olivia, about his deep-seated need for approval that she had exploited so masterfully. The divorce was brutal. Olivia fought dirty. She tried to claim half of my patent money, arguing it was a marital asset. William shut that down so fast it made her head spin. The patent was filed and the deal was made long after she'd abandoned the marriage. She got nothing. She tried to deny him any access to the baby, a boy she named Noah. But with the evidence of her financial fraud and the proof she'd cleaned out their accounts, the judge saw right through her. Michael was granted supervised visitation to begin with, which eventually became regular, unsupervised weekends. Holding my grandson Noah for the first time. It was a feeling I can't even describe. It was like a missing piece of my heart clicked back into place. He had Ethan's eyes. He had my chin. He was a Miller. Slowly, over months and then years, my son came back to me. He learned to be a father, a real one. He learned to change diapers, to soothe a crying baby, to be present. He started a small consulting firm from an office in the brownstone, using his business degree for himself this time, not for some faceless corporation. He was successful, but on his own terms. About 2 years after the divorce, he met a woman named Sophia. She was a landscape architect, kind and down to earth, with a laugh that filled up a room. The first time he brought her to my apartment for Sunday dinner, I watched him carefully. He wasn't trying to impress her. He wasn't performing. He was just himself. And she looked at him, not as a status symbol, but as a man. "Your father is an amazing man," she told me quietly while Ethan was in the kitchen. "The way he talks about you, the respect he has for you, it's beautiful." I knew then that he had finally broken the cycle. They got married a year later, not in some flashy, expensive venue, but in the garden behind the brownstone. It was a small ceremony, just close friends and family. I was Ethan's best man. As he stood there, with his wonderful wife Sophia by his side and his son Noah in his arms, I saw the man I had always dreamed he would become. Strong, kind, a good father, a loving husband. A man who knew the value of family, earned through hardship. Last Christmas, they all came over to my place. The little 2-bedroom apartment I never left. I could afford a palace now, but this place was my home. It was my anchor. Ethan handed me a small wrapped box. "This is for you, Dad." I opened it. Inside was a framed document. It was the deed to the Brooklyn brownstone. But something was different. He had gone to a lawyer and had my name added back onto it as a co-owner. "The house was never really mine, Dad," he said, his eyes shining. "It was always ours. I want us to be partners in everything." Beside the deed was a plane ticket, a first-class round-the-world ticket. "And this," Sophia said, smiling, "is for you, for your retirement. Go see the world, James. You've earned it." My grandson, Noah, now a chattering 4-year-old, ran up and hugged my legs. "Grandpa is the best," he shouted, and in that moment, surrounded by my son, my grandson, my wonderful daughter-in-law, in the small apartment that had witnessed all my struggles and all my triumphs, I felt a wave of pure, unadulterated happiness wash over me. It was a feeling more valuable than any patent, more precious than any brownstone. It was the feeling of a life come full circle. I never did take that trip around the world. Why would I? Everything I had ever wanted, everything I had ever fought for, was right there in that room. The story didn't end with Olivia getting her comeuppance on my doorstep. That was just the beginning. The real happy ending wasn't about revenge. It was about redemption. It was about rebuilding. And we did. Brick by brick, we built a new family, stronger and more beautiful than before. And they didn't just live happily ever after. They lived with gratitude, with respect, and with a whole lot of love. And me? I got to sit back and watch it all with a big, happy smile.